My name is Emily Zuloff, and I'm the co-director of the Seattle Clemency Project. Our project was started last year by my father, John Zuloff. He's a criminal defense attorney. He has more than 40 years of experience. He's also a great dad. And when I was growing up, he would take time out of his very busy schedule to do things like coach my sports teams. When I was 12 years old, my dad was the coach of my basketball team. This is our client, Gary. When Gary was 12 years old, Gary's father taught him how to rob pharmacies. From a beginning like that, you can probably imagine where it went. It went into drugs and addiction and a life of crime to support that addiction. And in 1997, over the course of a week, Gary committed several robberies. Fortunately, no one was injured. Gary never had a weapon. But unfortunately for Gary, the 3 strikes law had been passed a few years earlier. And Gary is given a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, which is normally where you would expect a story like Gary's to end. But that's not where Gary's story ends. It's been 20 years, and there have been some big changes for Gary. First, and most importantly, Gary is sober. And he's really proud of that sobriety. And second, it turns out that when Gary is sober, Gary is a phenomenal artist. People noticed, as you might imagine. University Beyond Bars asked him to teach a class to fellow inmates. And the Department of Corrections asked him to make a mural. And it went so well that they asked him to make another, and then another, and then another. They moved Gary to prisons all over the state to create these incredible works of art. So today, Gary is 70 years old. He walks with a cane. He's served about 3 times what you normally would for a standard robbery charge. And unless something changes, we as a society have told Gary that he is going to die in prison. And there are a lot of Garys. There are a lot of people who have served these long sentences, have made these amazing transformations, and they have no chance of getting out or of having their sentence reviewed. And part of the reason is this. Washington abolished the parole board in 1984. So if you committed a crime after 1984, you don't get a parole hearing. It doesn't exist for you. The only chance for someone with a long sentence, someone like Gary, is clemency. Clemency is a power that's held by the governor, and it allows him to shorten a person's sentence and set them free. And he makes that decision based on a recommendation from the Clemency and Pardons Board in Olympia. We think this stuff matters. We think it matters on a basic moral level, but we also know that it matters on a cost level. It's about $35,000 to house an inmate for a year. And that cost is going to go up as they age. As taxpayers, you and I are paying for that. So here's where we come in. The Seattle Clemency Project matches these reformed, deserving, long-serving men and women with free attorneys to help them file for clemency with the governor. We're the only organization in the state of Washington with this sole focus. So who are these deserving people? Well, the governor has said he's looking for people who have served at least 10 years and where there's something extraordinary in their situation, be that an extraordinary transformation or an extraordinary sentence. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people like Ronnie. Ronnie came from a background of abject poverty. And by his own estimation, he had read 1 book when he came to prison. Well, in the last 20 years, that 1 book has become 700 books. And Ronnie now teaches classes in conflict resolution. These are imperfect people. They made really big mistakes, but they've changed. They are now leaders and mentors in the prison. They take and they teach classes, and they need and deserve a second look. Our project has had a really busy first year. We've had over 350 inmates write to us. And we've driven to prisons all across the state to meet with them in person and hear their stories. And when we think they're ready, we go out into the legal community and we find an attorney to match with them. So far, we've been able to make 54 of those matches. That's 54 men and women who are going into this complex legal process with an advocate. We get asked a lot about release plans, and we know a clemency petition is only as good as its release plan. So we make sure that each client and attorney pair figures out housing, employment, and support network. And we use amazing organizations across the state like CDRNR, Fair Start, Pioneer Human Services to make that happen for our clients. We don't want them to just get out, we want them to thrive. Each of these petitions takes about 80 hours. They're not an easy lift for these attorneys. And we think that means that so far we've harnessed about $2 million in volunteer hours. So here's our big ask to you. We want to take our small, mostly volunteer operation and turn it into a sustainable nonprofit. We're doing that by building out our board, some of whom you see here. And we need to hire an executive director, somebody who's going to take the lead on fundraising and operations for us. Let me finish by telling you what's going on with Gary. In June of 2016, Gary appeared before the Clemency and Pardons Board, and he was given a unanimous recommendation for clemency. And just this past January, the governor signed off. Gary is going to get out next month. He will be 71 years old, but Gary is not going to die in prison. Gary's going to keep painting murals because Gary has something left to give. There are more Garys. We want to help them, and that can only happen with your support. Thank you.